Loney.
My own personal life, where I don't have my own family, this is a very important part. That you have a tendency then to look to other people as being part of your family. Of course, you know I have an awful big family. If you go back through all the football players.
Hey, Coach. Number 30 here, number 1 in your heart. John, Purcell, Schoenhart, and myself. Are you ready to come back and coach? Because we're going to have a major set to tomorrow. Yeah. We'll be there for around 1 o'clock. We'll bring lunch.
Don spent his retirement years in the quiet, historically restored village of Sherbrooke, Nova Scotia. It was a cold Super Bowl weekend in early February when a group of the coach's men flew in from central Canada for what was to become their last visit with Don.
Now you'll have to take the place as it is, man.
Hey, we're used to that.
You didn't come from Ottawa.
Just down Main Street, just down, you know.
Close.
Oh, you're from Ottawa.
Yeah.
You were kind of...
I
was borderline.
on the outskirts.
Ottawa East, Ottawa South.
Start off with talking about the few guys from Ottawa that came in with long hair, and the other guy came in the early 70s.
You just start off the thing saying that, and I'll say yes.
My point is, was there a change back then in the late 60s, early 70s, about listening to a coach? If you said there today, gone tomorrow, and they didn't cut the hair, respect, what was your course to take?
No, you know what? I don't even agree. It had nothing to do with respect. It had to do with a whole shift in mentality, in a thought process.
Yeah, no.
And
in a new era.
The days when Scroney and I and John were there, if the coach said run through the wall, you ran through the wall. A few years after us,
But if you said
somebody said run through the wall, and the guy would say why.
The period had changed. We were going out of a period of social life into a new period, which brought in the fact that football players could actually object to something. They never objected to anything before. They did exactly what they were told.
The people who came in as freshmen in my last year, and then the classes of 19, the subsequent years. These are kids coming out of high school where, they already have, and I date myself here, they got the latest Beatle album and the latest Stone album, and they probably have longer hair. They probably know which end of a joint to light, et cetera and so on, and they're probably not really buying into like a 1950s style crew cut kind of approach to things.
As a young man who may be escorting his date to any one of a number of functions.
And certainly, I'm sure wouldn't be as inclined to take the kind of hard-nosed approach that Don Loney would have championed.
Whatever it is, he has to wait until the woman is ready. And man, how long does it take one to get ready? Well, there she is, and it was worth it, wasn't it? Perhaps the couple were headed for one of the informal college dances.
But as the 60s unfolded, when there was some political activity where there were students who probably thought that it was time for St. FX to roll out of the 17th into the early 18th century. And in the last year, around the possibility of boycotting of some exams and some conflict between the administration, the faculty, and some of the students, it was arranged to have a 2-day kind of summit to see if they could work out some of the problems, which were around like, if you were over 21, could you have booze on campus? 21, not 19. If you owned a car, could you bring the car to Antigonish if you could find a place to store it? Could there be visitations in the dorms of boys and girls, like half days, weekends with open doors, stuff like that? So anyway, I ended up at a session at Crystal Cliff with Don Loney, a small, maybe 8 or 9 people, like a faculty member. He was a coach. There was a couple of students, and I forget who else was there. Certainly would have been a member of the clergy and all of the groups in those days. And over the course of a day, I was surprised, like across the board, about Don Loney. I would have assumed, of course, he would have been hardcore, totally in support of the established clerical hierarchy, which was in control of St. FX in those days. He was not. He was clearly way better informed, way more moderate, and a much, much broader guy. I didn't know about the painting or those kinds of things, but you could tell by the way he talked. And I remember coming away not only feeling different about him, but feeling an awful lot better about him, and finding myself kind of chastising myself over the next day or so.
The long hair was a sign by the individual that he could do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was a social trend. And the guys that played football, and perhaps other sports, didn't want to be disassociated with everybody else. They thought it was their right. They could grow their hair the way they wanted it, you see. So anyways, we played this music in the dressing room to try to rouse the guys. You know, music does a lot. And it worked for many years. Get everybody up on their toes and couldn't wait to get out and face the enemy and all that stuff. And so anyway, one day one of the guys came up to me before the game, one of the new guys. Coach, don't you have some other kind of music? I said, why?
What other kind of music is there?
Yeah. Well, we like, and he named some rock and roll tune. Do you have something by the Beatles?
Yeah.
You know? Uh-oh, I said. Times are changing.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's hard to imagine that the young kids with the kind of expectations they had and the kind of haircuts and tastes they had in music wouldn't have had some effect on a guy like Don and say, you know what? I had a long time here. I'm a legend. I'm going to say adios and right off to Sherbrooke.
Did you ever think you might have liked to coach longer?
No, not on. I would have liked to coach longer, but I didn't want to see me going into a conflict with society or a conflict with kids because this is what they do nowadays.
Yeah.
If they could prove to me that what they were doing was adding a plus or making the game better, but from what I could see after 20-some years, didn't represent the game. It made me almost religious about it.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't see that, then my option was to get out of it, which I did. You know what we forgot to mention?
The hockey stick?
The hockey stick. I was at X at the time, and Harvey's playing for Montreal, and they get in the playoffs against Detroit, I think. And so I used to like to try to get up to see the odd game if I could. So I got a hold of Doug, and I said, can we get couple of tickets? He says, oh yeah. So we get to the Forum, and yeah, there's 2 tickets there for us, and we saw the game, and then after the game was over, I said, come on, George, we're going down to the dressing room, say hello to some of these guys. And you're talking about some of the all-time famous guys. You're talking about Doug Harvey and Rocket and all those guys. They're all sitting in the dressing room, the game's over, and so I go in, and Doug comes over, and I says, Doug, can you do me a big favor? What's that? I want a hockey stick to bring back to Antigonish, give it to this kid. Oh, no problem. So he goes over to Maurice Richard. He takes the stick right out of his hand, and he takes it around the dressing room, gets everybody to sign it. You know, all the biggies, period, eh? And he said, here, how's that? I said, oh, geez, you know. So I brought it back, and I gave it to Jimmy Chisholm. He was our water boy. Eh? I guess he was our water. We called him the water boy. Well, so a couple of days later, I'm walking down the street in Antigonish, and I saw some kids over playing, what we used to call it?
Street hockey.
Street hockey. So I walked over, and Jimmy's there. And what's he got in his hand? The stick. Do you know what the stick would be worth today? $10,000.
Maybe more.
Well, we'll say $10,000.
That's a starter.
Yeah, and he's out playing shinny hockey with it.
This is another side of Don that people never saw. As he got a little bit older, in his 50s, he was a champion of the underdog.
Baby stuff. And then,
Long before the days of organizations like Big Brothers, Don's boot camp style of helping seemed to work well with a number of troubled youth. One afternoon, he pulled out some letters and photos from a young man he had taken under his wing many years ago. At that time, the youth had no father and was being brought up by his mother in desperate circumstances.
when he was a little guy, oh, I got to read this stuff. When he used to come out to the house, I told you before, you get on the old typewriter, and he wrote this one night. Dear Don, I like coming out to see you because I have lots of fun and like going out in the boat because I learned something. Now the spelling is terrible. I do not come out here for to eat and go out in the boat or play darts or drive the truck. I just come out to enjoy your company. Now imagine that from a young kid. And I wouldn't get rid of that for the world. Eh? Then all of a sudden, after many, many, many years, we're talking about 1985 to 1996. I get this letter from, I don't think I can read it. To dear old friend, which is kind of unusual for a kid to start off a letter like, but he's not a kid anymore. He's no. Thank you for sending the photos. Boy, they brought back some good memories. You were a big part. I can't read that. It's too difficult. You read it. You were a big part in my life when I was growing up. You were a big brother I didn't have. I can read it myself without breaking up. It's when I read it out loud. You were a big brother I didn't have. You have shown me so many things that my own family couldn't show me. Poor kid didn't have much of a family. I still remember waiting for you to pick me up for the weekend. I was so excited. It was like a break from my own family. You are a very special person. That's the part that's hard to read. Maybe another sip of rum. You're a very special person, though there isn't many men like yourself left in this world. I owe you a lot for my success in life. You have taught me to be a go-getter. And I remember you always telling me, nobody is going to hand you a golden platter. Well, that's not exactly the way it is. But what I said is life is not on a golden platter or something like that. How did you not get that? That was our school song at those two. Ours was Cheer, cheer for old West Hill High. I was lucky in having the kind of parents I did, you know. And then lucky in having such good friends that I did when I was younger. And lucky to have the opportunity to come to places like St. FX. And lucky to have the whole thing. Kennedy. We used to call him Red when he was a kid. He used to get in our way. He was running around at the end of the practice field. And I used to say, get that kid out of here. And so they'd say, okay, we'll take him out. But he might be back tomorrow. Well, I said, okay, if he comes back 3 days in a row, he can hang around. So anyway, here he is 50 years later. and he's sitting there. He's very positive. He's a very good friend. So we decided that there's more to me than football.
Sailing house to alma mater, on for St. FX's name, leading, trailing, vim unveiling, play the game. Life's the goal that gleams before